Alright, Shalom, Hebrews. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, Hebrews. You know, this is a message, to the unwoken Israelite that's called African American or the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. And, it's kind of messed up how, our history has been in the hands of the people that's, responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. And how our history, is, been in control of the people that's been holding us in subjection, and how that the titles that they then gave us since we've been in captivity, nigger, Negroes, blacks, African Americans, and all kind of old titles that they done bestowed on us. And not one time have we sit down as a people and said, hey man, this is what we're gonna call ourselves and this is our final name. But our name changed every 25 years. It then changed, and they got books with Negro wrote in it, and back in the 30s and 40s, and then they got books with just blacks, we just call a color, and man, they call us coloreds too. Man, they done gave us all kind of names, and we know that that's a proverb and a byword or curse that the Creator say would be, on the Israelites once they broke covenant. But what I want to do, man, I want to try to give you Hebrews a little insight on the people who cause the names in the settings in the culture that we have and that we hold up to, and how that is classified and it's wrote and it's categorized. And the people who been doing that for a long time is actually the people that we abandoned our heritage to during the Babylonian Wars. Like I told you, Hebrews, and then showed you, if you type it in on a computer, Israelites running into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, or any kind of way that you want to spell it, you ain't gonna get nothing. It's gonna be totally zero. You ain't gonna get no history on that. And then the only history that you do gonna get is gonna come back to me, the Israelite Brotherhood. But we know that all these titles that these folks done put on us are curses. Are the curses, and we know that one of the curses in Deuteronomy 37, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, where the Elohim shall lead thee. So, all these nations and all these different places, they didn't give us all kind of different names, but our names come from the institutions that's been established in the West, in the Americas, and and then it went to the other places like Britain and France, the places they got the obelisks. They have the institutions to keep the false history and pass the false history off to the transatlantic slave trade descendants that they captured and are responsible for having in captivity in their nations and so forth. But the seat in the heart of the people that put together all these different names and titles and history, and then fashion our culture, and that lead the way are the institutions in the Americas. And we know that the people from the transatlantic slave trade ain't had no institutions where we control and say, yeah, this is what we teach, because we know we don't have no publishing companies that make the paper and the pens and the books and the pencils and so forth to put all that together. And how we didn't have the we didn't create the English language in its meanings and words, and how we learned about English and its meanings and words here in our captivity, and how that the people from Africa that was captured during the transatlantic slave trade didn't even speak English, and how that it's hard for us right now, especially me, to speak what they call proper English. And some of the so-called uh, African Americans laugh and giggle when they hear you talk and you don't speak the proper English that some of them do. Mean you have some nasal nose sounding African Americans, the unwoke Israelites that that's kind of perfected they slave masters language and understanding, and them be the very ones that you can't tell nothing to, and they'll never know they Israelite heritage, and they just got pigmentation, but they got the mind of the oppressor too. But anyway, it's some people that we abandon our heritage to, during the Babylonian Wars. They got a long history, and they've been around governing city, states, administration, governments, and having states, states and cities that function with with administration, the like you do now, the way it's set up now, the way society function in its fashion, with the civil engineers, and then you got the different craftsmen that practice the different trades and so forth, and how they all licensed through a government agency, and how that government agency that was created back in antiquity in Babylon is the same one that governed America in the way that it functions. Our whole culture today is based upon a Babylonian culture, which is what they call Western civilization, and the people that are behind Western civilization are what you call the Amorite tribes, and the Amorite tribes, specifically the Sepharvims. The Sepharvims were Amorites from Babylon, and how that, during the Babylonian Wars, we abandoned our heritage to them, and they was placed in our land during the Assyrian times and troubles that we had with the Assyrians, like around about 722 BC, that a great segment of their population was placed in the northern kingdom, and how that they was book writers and scribes and people that had administrations, governments, and temples and so forth for thousands of years, and how that when we Israelites eventually was driven off the land by their friends, our enemies' friends, that, we abandon our heritage to some people that can fashion a culture for you, and can keep you blind to your real heritage if you fall under their control. And then that's what happened to us Hebrews. We fell up under the control of people that know how to mentally enslave people. And that's why I come, that I say is the Israel, the unknown, the unwoke Israelite, that's called African American, because, the people from the transatlantic slave trade are really the Israelites that had broke covenant during the Babylonian Wars. But this is the cold twist to it, that most Hebrews don't have this as part of their history, is about the Sepharvims, the people from Cyprus, the Sepharvims. And the Sepharvims are the Sephardi Jews today. And these are the people that's got thousands of years of civilization and controlling governments. And then one of they to show you how deep they is, and then how they function in symbolism, and got organizations in secret societies that they've been having for forever, that could trace its origins all the way back to Babylon, and how that they just reap the rewards of society is because they've been controlling. They are even the bankers, the people that control banking, and been having banking since thousands of years, since Babylon, was around in the Tower of Babel and so forth. Them folks been had banking since then. Check this out. They'll even tell you. So this is the type of people that we dealing with that can fashion your mentality. You know, if you become their slaves and they have some type of dominion over you, then they gonna give you their education and cultural system. And that's what happened to us Israelites during the transatlantic slave trade on the plantation. They was grooming us and fashioning us to receive the Babylonian tradition that would keep us locked out of our heritage and so forth. But look, if you look, man, they'll tell you, man, they got all kind of encyclopedias, and the more that you read about them, all the stories about them ain't the same. All the stories, some history, you know what I'm saying, they'll give a little bit of history about it, and then they'll give a little more in another research and engine, and then, you know, they'll give another little. So you have to take all that history together. And if you read everything about them, I done spent thousands of hours reading about them and studying them and so forth. Thousands of hours. And, you know, they are basically the fallen angelic beings' descendants. You know, the fallen angelic beings, the giants that was around during the time when we come out of Egypt to destroy them, and how that those giants, the Nephilims, were descendants from the fallen angelic beings that had mixed with Cain descendants. And I show you how they went underground and how they come up. Well, these are the ones that the smart ones, the ones that survived everything and that's been around today, and how did they got our heritage, and how they pulled a slick move, and how they know that we was dealing with the real creator, because it was the real creator that had given them civilization and saved them one time, and how that a segment of them was kind of like servants of the creator before they broke bad and become wicked, that the fallen angelic beings seduced them and turned them wicked. And you know, that story is given in the book of Ezekiel 16, and a lot of Hebrews read Ezekiel 16 and don't have no understanding of what they're reading and what's going on. But look, check this out. You know, like I say, if you read all the stuff about Sipper and the Sephardims, you can kind of like draw the picture, and they'll tell you they are the bankers, that they created and controlled the banking system. You know, it tell you, look, an ancient city-state of Babylonia in Mesopotamia, what today is called Iraq, you know, ancient Babylon, you know what I'm saying? And then as you read down, you know, as you read on down, it's going to tell you that it had a, you know, twin city. And look, the two distinct, all right, the two distinct twin cities coexisted as a unity. The Old Testament calls then Sephardim, and reflecting their dual status. Two more Sippers are mentioned, but they have not been located. So, man, you know, they had, you know, the Sephardims was in quite a few spots. And look, if you type in Sephardim, all right, let's go. Sephardim. Alright. Sephardim. Alright. We're gonna see what it means. You know, Sephardim today, look. Where is the Sephardim today? The Sephardic, look, where is the Sephardim? Where is the Sephardim today? It's gonna be the Sephardims and the Sephardics. You see, that's the same name. Them the same peoples. The term Sephardic, you know, those are the Sephardims. And then if you translate Sephardim, that it translate into Sephardi. And the Sephardis are the Sepharvims. In the Sepharvims are the Sephardi's, and it's like it's only two set of Jews. It's the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi's, and then these are the people, that we abandon our heritage to, the Sepharvims, and then they are responsible for the Babylonians' history. But look, check this out. They'll tell you that they responsible for the banks too. And look, little unknown about Sipper, except what is related to in his temples. Yeah, the only reason little is unknown about them is because they are responsible for Western culture and its history and its writing. So they ain't gonna write nothing bad about themselves. And matter of fact, they'll try to leave as much of themselves out of history, since they controlling all the industries and resources and stuff. That's like some of those guilds, and those associations, man, that the workers and carpenters and iron workers and all that stuff can be traced back to Babylon, to Europe, and then from Europe to them Greek days, and then back to Babylon. And then when they organize and work, and then companies and stuff that's been around for a long time, all this stuff can be traced back to Babylon. And then these peoples are the masters of it. And then how did they control, the paper and books that, our history will be written in. And then they will be the professors and the teachers that would okay a history, and then put it in the universities and colleges and so forth. And then they teach that all the way down to the lower grades and so forth. And how did these people's been in control of all that? Like, you can't do nothing without money. Look, the temple, right? The temple of Shemish is suggested to have developed the world's first bank system, loaning out and allowing deposits of values. That was all before the introduction of money. So these people, the temple of Shemish is gonna be one of their gods and so forth. And I think that's gonna be one of the fallen angelic beings, and that's like, they go them giants, and that's gonna be them, Amorite folks, serving them. And I done got videos explaining how the Nephilims and Cain descendants got into the Amorites and so forth. And how that them people control civilization from way back then up to now, so that when we became enslaved in their system, that we was gonna be brainwashed, and that how that that is sometime impossible to come up out of their brainwashing, and they mental mindset that they try to put the people in, because they've been controlling culture and civilization for a long time. And just imagine our heritage failed to them. And look, if you go to 2 Kings, 2 Kings chapter 17, look, turn right to it. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 24, you'll see, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Kut, and from Abel, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. Now these Babylonian scribes, these are the Babylonian scribes, and as you read the history about them, they'll tell you that this is where the cuneiform writing and man, everything basically come from, and how did this city Sepharvaim is connected to the ancient cities Sumer and Akkad and so forth, and how that that them people been around since then. So if they was around before we Israelites got the covenant. See, the Sumerian king list. Look, the Sumerian king list, a king of Sipper. Man, they had all the the kings back then in Mesopotamia had, to be associated with Sipra in some kind of way. So, that's governments and administrations and so forth. So now these people know how to create a culture, and they are an extension of the Amorite culture that we Israelites didn't destroy when we came out of Egypt. When the Creator gave us a culture to extinguish this wicked culture that we Israelites are captured under. And like I say, most Israelites ain't gonna understand, because man, it's deep. Man, we dealing with some real deep folks, man. I'm talking about some folks that's been around for thousands of years controlling civilization. Thousands of years of controlling civilization. And look, even Hammurabi, the Babylonian king, laid the foundation and repaired its temples and so forth. And how Nebuchadnezzar, the people that invaded the promised land and drove us into Africa, and how his generals and them repaired Shemish, the temple, of Ibabra, and how that, I got a video showing that how those Sephardims, because they had been in our land practicing our heritage since 722 BC. I show you how did they come to the Passover with King Hezekiah, and how that they was practicing our heritage and so forth, and that when we ran into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, like 134 years after that they was placed by the Assyrians, we ran into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, all the tribes, and that little bitty percentage, that 1% that was captured and took into Babylon, I show how they was destroyed when they come back, and how that the land was just taken from them, and how that they was murdered and killed, and then not wrote in history. You see what I'm saying? And how that the people who was writing history back then are the same people that got our heritage now, that call themselves Israelites. The Sephardi groups in the Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi gonna be the Scythians in history. And then I show you how the Ashkenazi chased us into Africa, and how that the Scythians made up the Babylonian army. And how that these folks ain't gonna tell you this in history, man. Even the camps, that's like, one day it's gonna come a time that camp doctrine and the beliefs that they hold, if it ain't based upon Tanakh history, that stuff gonna fade out, because that's part of the history that our enemies put together, and how did the camps function off the myths that our enemies created, and how these folks created a lot of myths that's been governing the world, is basically been keeping them in control for a long time. But that's Ashkenazi, and Ashkenazi made up the Chaldean army, and they would chase us into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, which would leave our heritage to them. The Sephardims, and how the Sephardims and Ashkenazis been having proxy wars, and that's basically where all your Western religions gonna come from, or the religions that stem off what they call the Abrahamic religion. And we know Prophet Abraham ain't brung no religion or endorsed no Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, and how the Prophet Abraham wasn't in agreement with none of that, and how Prophet Abraham was a believer in the one Creator, and how that the land of Canaan was promised to his descendants, who would uphold a law, a covenant that the Creator gave to them, and that how we, the Israelites, should have upheld the covenant, and then it wouldn't be none of this stuff going on today. All right, let's do some of this, Hebrews. Let's look up the Sephardims, and then I'm gonna show you something, how they had a culture as Amorites. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cuddar, and from Abel, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria, and dwelt in the cities thereof. Now, as you read, it's going to tell you how that, that they, stayed in the land, and then how they got some priests and brung one back to teach them, and then how that they would, hang around, and then how that they would do the culture that, that was in the Northern Kingdom and so forth. But then, as they stayed there, you will see during Hezekiah time, during King Hezekiah time, this is Second Chronicles 30. Look, turn right to it. And then how that they would come to the Passover dinner. They would be the strangers. They would be the strangers in the promised land, the strangers that was coming into our covenant. And then how that they would, be there during Hezekiah times. And this is 7 years after the so-called Assyrian captivity. And I show you how all the tribes were still at home. And then how these people would have our heritage when we ran into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, and how we never returned. Everybody was driven off the land. As the Creator say, we would be driven off the land, and how did our heritage fell to them people, and that them people, since they was practicing our heritage back then, and came to the Passover dinner and was trying to do our covenant. And then how I showed that in the book of Joshua and Judges, how we didn't drive out a whole bunch of people, and then how that those people we didn't drive out would be kindred to them. And some of them people, we made them people servants in whatever temple that we would build. And man, how that destroyed us in the end, because throughout our whole time we didn't follow the words of the Creator. And then that would, eventually lead to our destruction, us being driven off the land, and then our heritage falling to some Babylonian scribes who can blot your name out of history. See, if you fall into their hands and you fall up under their control, then your heritage getting blotted out, especially if you don't control the resources of the land in the Western culture. That's like, say, for instance, China. We know that they done made in the Western culture with all these churches and missionaries and so forth, and how they done made all these Bibles and so forth, because everybody think that the Jews, the Sephardi's and the Ashkenazis are the children of Israel, and how that they done took all these Bibles and done spread them all around the world. And whenever somebody read the Bible, they think that the Jews today are the Israelites in the biblical days. And if they believe in the God, then they think that those Jews are connected to the Creator. How about China ain't go for that? And China say, y'all ain't putting no Bibles in our country so our citizens can worship the Jews. That's how they get people to worship the Jews, is because they pass them Bibles out. And that the Jews been holding the Israelite heritage for a long time. For a long time, they've been holding the Israelite heritage for some thousands of years. And if they've been holding the Israelite heritage for some thousands of years, and then how everything just now got modern, then man, them people slick when they pass the Bibles out, and then everybody read the Bible and then think that the Jews today are the Israelites in the past, because they've been holding that title unchallenged for thousands of years. 2,741 years now. You see, they've been holding this heritage. You know what I'm saying? The Israelite heritage. So that's a long time, and nations just now got modernized now today. And how that these people been in control of Western culture and Western history, and how that everybody been misled unto now, because we Israelites are waking up, and we was only given a 400-year bondage in Egypt. And then, it said we're going to come out. And then, we could be coming out mentally. A lot of us think we supposed to come out physically. And I know that we are supposed to come out physically, because the Creator's supposed to return us back to our homeland and restore us greater than what we once were. But that our 400-year exodus from the Egypt in captivity, it could be a mental exodus from this country, because I'm telling you, I got some history to show that we Israelites, that the people from the transatlantic slave trade who they call African Americans are actually the Israelites in the Bible or the Tanakh that broke the covenant. I have proof that you can't dispute, and how that they can't do nothing with it. You know, I done tried to put it on the enemy's plate and let them devour it. Man, they throw it up and don't want no parts of it. It make them sick. You know, you give them this history that the Israelite Brotherhood showed that we ran into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, and how that the people in the book of Jeremiah went into Africa, and how that they never returned, and how that they went into Africa to worship the Egyptian gods, you know, and how that they never returned back to the promised land. And then how that, you know, all that time went by and ain't nobody wrote no history about it. And then I got videos showing how close Egypt is to the promised land, real close. I could pull the satellite map up right now, and man, I'm talking about it's so close. And that we know that the people that ran into Africa in the book of Jeremiah went into Africa to worship the Egyptian religion, never returned back home to be reunited with these Israelites here that returned from the Babylonian Mesopotamian captivity that they was taken into those areas. And I got books, I mean history videos explaining the exiles' history and what happened to them, and how that they vanished after the book of Malachi. That's the end. And then I show you how that the Jews tried to get into where that they was into our heritage, the ones that was into our heritage, the Sephardims, that after the history of Malachi, and how that they merged themselves in, and how that they tried to continue the Israelite heritage, which they did up to now. You know, like I say, we waking up now that 400-year prophecy is probably a 400-year mentally to come out of the Egyptian system, because the Egyptian and the Babylonian system is the same. They both worship false gods and had a bunch of false gods. The Egyptian gods was false, and the Babylonian gods was false. They wasn't the creator. You know, there's only one true creator, and that's the creator that Abraham, Isaac, and our father Jacob, Israel worship, and we call him Yahweh. Okay, Hebrews, we know that when we come out of Egypt with Prophet Moses, that we didn't do right, and that we didn't uphold the covenant, and that how we just kept messing around with the Canaanite tribes. And this will be the same peoples that we're in bondage with today, and how we in love with the folks that they descendants, but because once they get us under the control, what they quick to say is, we ain't the one that put you under control. This is what our enemies' children to say, but they keeping the system intact that they parents put us under. They'll say, we ain't we didn't put y'all up under this bondage, and how we, you know, but they still benefiting and keeping the system intact that they ancestors put over us. You see what I'm saying? But how we lay in bed with these folks, loving them to death, and how that them people are the people that love our enemies like that, are the unwoken Israelites that our enemies system been on, and how that they ain't never come off and up under that, and how some of them ain't gonna never come off and up under it, and how that they gonna go to their graves fashion and form from our enemies, and how that's awful, and that ain't what the Israelites supposed to be. An Israelite supposed to wake up and then overturn the system that you are oppressed under, and that will give the rest of humanity relief. You see, because this system that we up under now, man, it's destroying the world through us, and basically all the systems that's in function in the Western Hemisphere come off our back and got its start off us. You know, that's like, you know, your early monuments in the Americas was built off slave labor, that how them folks ain't built nothing, and how that those monuments are held in high esteem today, but they don't go into the history of that the slaves built it, like in Washington, D.C. and so forth. Yeah, but Hebrews, we all messed up, but we got some clarity now because we know that the Sephardims, the Sephardi Jews and Ashkenazi too, because Ashkenazi took over the Sephardi way, and how that they both function the same, and then how that them people, man, got a system set up to where that they trying to govern us forever, and that the only way that we can come off from being governed by them is to claim our Israelite heritage, and then to challenge them about our Israelite heritage. You know, we have to condemn the people that condemn us, and that's the servant of the Most High, as written in the Tanakh. And I'm gonna find that verse where it say that the servant of the Most High is to condemn the enemies that rise up against you. You know, and that's what we're supposed to do. All right, Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi was a son of Gomer, and we know that the prophet Noah said that Ashkenazi would be in the Israelites' heritage. So that had to come to pass. So, you know, this lets you know that we dealing with some real prophets and some real events that took place, because it's impossible for all this history in the Tanakh to have taken place and then it be a coincidence, especially dealing with the curses in the history of the Israelites. It's not no coincidence that we was enslaved from Africa, and that how the Hebrews ran into Africa, the Israelites abandoning the covenant, and how that they was promised slavery in the Egyptian system. You know, and that's what we have today, and that's what our ancestors been under. But if you go to Genesis 9:27, Yah shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now, what's Shem gonna be at if Japheth is dwelling in his tents, in his house? You know, back then the tent is your house. Where would Shem be? You know, Shem got to be somewhere, and Shem was gonna be in captivity. And sure enough, the Canaanites, servants to Japheth, ain't nothing but the Sephardi's done lost their strength in their way, and how Ashkenazi run the whole show over in the promised land, in our inheritance that the Creator gave us, and how the prophet Noah was right on time when he said that, and how that come to pass. That come to pass, and that's gonna come to pass during the Babylonian wars, when we Israelites said that we was through with the covenant. And then that's what the book of Jeremiah is about, you know. And man, the book of Jeremiah, as you read it, you see that the children of Israel still in the land, and that how he was dealing with everybody that King Josiah was dealing with. And then I show in plenty videos how King Josiah was our last chance, and how that, you know, after the Egyptians killed him and put us back on the Egyptian religion, how we been in messed up ever since, and how we Hebrews are the continuation right now of the covenant breakers that broke the covenant during the Babylonian wars. Man, it's messed up, man. We messed up, but we got it gravy at the same time. It's good. It's messed up and good at the same time. It's messed up because our people still sleep, and they up under the control of them Babylonian scribes, believing in what they call them, you know, African Americans, Negroes, blacks, and all them old evil, wicked titles that don't connect you to no history. And then I show in history how they lie and try to make it seem like that, you know, we people from the transatlantic slave trade. Man, I show in history that all the places where they say that we come from and that they was taking us from, and that like the Congo, Nigeria, Angola, and all them places, that those were actually the peoples that helped enslave us. And that I show that we Israelites were the people that they call Gramintians, and that how that after the Sahara, the water in the Sahara dried up, and how we started moving around, and then how we would start having conflict with them groups that they call us right now today. That they call us right now today. And how that them peoples that they say that we are West Africans and that we are from them people, and that how that you could trace your heritage to them. Them are the very people that enslaved us. And then I'm showing in history how the Grammentes, was a name that the Greek called the peoples, and how they had soldiers and military and everything, and how that those Hebrews that ran into Africa was identical to the Grammentians. And I show in history how the Grammentian empire broke up because the water dried up, and how did they start roaming around and having conflict with the other Hamite groups, like the Congo groups and the Angolan groups and all that. It was about right here in in Niger, right below Libya and them parts and stuff, and how we would have conflict with all them other folks, and how that they would drag us all the way to the West Coast, and then, sell us off, to them Spaniards and them folks from Portugal, the Jews and so forth. But Hebrews, our history fell into the hands of the Babylonian scribes, and they are responsible for having Hebrews brainwashed. They are responsible for having Hebrews brainwashed, and how when Hebrews go to the colleges and the institutions, and how they are being educated in a system that our enemies created to keep you out of heritage. Yes, you have to have job skills and so forth, and that you do have to go, to them people to get some learning and some understanding. But you should wake up to your Israelite heritage while you doing that, and that you are not no African Americans. All right, Hebrews, this is where we ran into Africa to get them folks the power that they got. If you go to Jeremiah 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18, you'll see this is where we broke the covenant. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burnt incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelled in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of food, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. So we would go into Africa, and we never returned. And that would cause the transatlantic slave trade. And then once we fell into the hands of our enemies, then they would put their educational system on us. Like I show in videos, that there's no history saying that the Hebrews ran into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, is because the very people that we abandon our heritage to are responsible for Western history, and they not gonna write about the Israelites going into Africa to live, because then that would expose who they are, and how that once we fell into their hands, then they will put their educational system on you, and then that's supposed to keep you away from your heritage. You see, that's supposed to keep you away from your heritage, and how that they can govern you through that control. If you don't know that you are Israelite and you walking around in America, man, them folks control you. It's plain as simple as that, because you haven't reconnected back to your ancient roots, your ancient heritage. And it's a known fact that if you don't know your past, you ain't going nowhere in the future. And that's how we are continuously being maneuvered and manipulated. That's like to show you the manipulation and how much power they got, and how mentally warped we are, that they made us think that we was getting some civil rights, and how we was gonna be in some type of good position from doing businesses and going into the enemy stores and buying their products and going to their schools and living with them. and how the civil rights destroyed us and how we don't have no business. Man, it's hard to find a black or so-called black or African American business. Man, it's hard to find one. Man, you got to get on the internet and search in your city and you stay all around black folks, but yet ain't no business there. Man, I went to take some people to get a haircut the other day. We trying to find a black-owned haircut place. Man, they don't even own that. You know what I'm saying? They might be renting the building. If you can get one rented, that he ain't just renting the booth from a foreigner in the enemy. Man, we all messed up. But that comes from being under the control of our enemies and not knowing that we Israelites. See, once we start waking up that we Israelites, then you're going to only want to do business with an Israelite. And you're going to only want to help the people in your community. And that's why come our enemies go through very strong efforts to keep you from connecting to your Israelite heritage, because their success and their prosperity come from our suffering. Soon as we stop suffering, then they start suffering. You see what I'm saying? So that's like when it say that the curses will be put on your enemies. Soon as you wake up to Almighty Yah and start trying to embrace your heritage and get away from the evil and wickedness of our enemies, then that's the end of them. Then the curses go on in them, because they already wicked and evil. It's just when they got us evil and wicked that it do us worse than them. And we deteriorate worse than them. Faster than them. Anyway. Alright, shalom Hebrews. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. The unwoke Israelite that's called African American or the transatlantic slave trade descendants. We are the Israelites. We are the Hebrew Israelites, as I've shown in all the videos. Look through them videos, Hebrews, and tell your family members to look at the videos and subscribe and listen to them videos day and night like I do. Just listen to them. Just listen to me. I represent the Israelite Brotherhood, and I promise you, when you listen to me, you're going to get an understanding of your heritage. You're going to get an understanding of your heritage, and you're not going to be no financial institute for the camps to prey on and so forth, and for people to take advantage of you. Because once you know this history, man, you ain't got to go to no churches and all them old places to congregate, because you know the truth. You can pick the scriptures up and read it yourself and get to understand it. You know, I done laid the groundworks and the foundation for it. You know, all praise be Almighty Yah. All right, Hebrews, this is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood.